In the land of Tamriel, there are no shortage of factions and guilds dedicated to a specific trade. From warriors to thieves, mages to assassins, and even merchants to, bards. Joining a faction has been a core concept of the Elder Scrolls series since the days of Daggerfall back in 1996. So naturally, we will be able to join certain groups in the Elder Scrolls 6, but who will they be? Hello, my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni. I'm Neloth, and today I want to talk about the Elder Scrolls 6 and what factions will be in the game. I am going to be structuring this video as if the game will be set in Hammerfell, home of the Redguards, which seems likely from the promo and the teasers we have gotten, but we don't know for certain. It could be taking place in both Hammerfell and High Rock, or maybe somewhere else entirely, like Elsweyr, so please take this video with the grainiest of salt. Also, I have recently gotten sick, again, so please excuse my voice if it's not up to par with my usual videos. So first, let us talk about the warrior factions. Hammerfell is the land of the Redguards, who are very dedicated to martial and combat skills, similar to the Nords. I mean, have you seen my Greatest Warriors video? Half the guys on there were Redguards. So because of this, a warriors guild will obviously be prevalent in this game, but what kind? Well, first, we should start with the Fighters Guild, who are exactly how they sound, a group of fighters that do combat jobs from killing skeevers to slaying trolls for profit. The Fighters Guild has been a joinable faction since the days of Daggerfall, with the exception of Skyrim, where we instead had the Nordic Companions. Now, personally, I don't like the Fighters Guild, or the Mages Guild for that fact, because they just seem far too generic for my tastes, as I prefer factions that feel more included in the culture of whatever country they are based in. The Morag Tong and the Great Houses of Morrowind are a great example, and the Companions and College of Winterhold in Skyrim are another. Now, we don't know what happened to the Fighters Guild after Oblivion, if they were dismantled like the Mages Guild, or if they are still kicking around, but if they are still around, they could be in Hammerfell. Another potential Fighters Guild we could see is the Iron Wheel, an organization that is introduced in the Elder Scrolls Online in the Thieves Guild expansion that takes place in Abaz Landing. The Iron Wheel are a militaristic and zealous order of bailiffs, or mercenaries, hired to keep order, and in the DLC they are hired by Magnifica Falora to hunt down all of the Thieves Guild who reside in Abaz Landing. Now, it is possible that the Iron Wheel is no more by the 4th era, especially considering they lost their employer and gradually returned to the city of Tanith in Elder Scrolls Online, but it is possible that in their defeat, new leaders took the reins and changed the direction of the Iron Wheel. Something that I think would be really cool to see is a rivalry or feud between the Iron Wheel, or whatever Hammerfell-based warriors faction, and the Fighters Guild, similar to the Mages Guild and House Telvanni's rivalry in Morrowind. I would absolutely love to have the choice between joining either the Iron Wheel or the Fighters Guild and become locked out from joining the other faction, and the ending of the questline could mean wiping out the other faction to gain dominance over Hammerfell. Another warrior faction that I feel could be joined is the Ashaba, which translates to the Unclean People. The Ashaba are a Redguard faction that are shunned by their society for interactions with the undead, because they slay any and all undead, including their raised ancestors. Now, in the Second Era, the Redguards were extremely superstitious of their honored dead, and their customs prohibited them from defiling the dead, even if by defiling, they really mean slaying them again. Those that slay their ancestors are cast out from society, and the Ashaba are a group made up of outcasts that were forced to put down the undead, and when Hammerfell is faced with a necromantic problem, the Ashaba are called in. Now, I don't really like this Redguard lore as I feel it's just poorly written. However, the concept of the Ashaba is still really cool, and I could see them implemented as some kind of vigilante faction. Or maybe Hammerfell casted their superstitions aside, and the Ashaba rose to prominence and became a mercenary fighting faction. It could happen. Another group that is most likely to actually be seen in the Elder Scrolls 6 is the Alik'r. Basically, they are a mercenary group from the Alik'r Desert that are most known for being present in Skyrim. Not much is known about the Alik'r mercenaries, except that they were employed by the noble houses of Tanith to track a woman named Eamon down. So it goes to show that they have no bounds and will go outside of Hammerfell to get jobs done. They are also very well known for their curved swords. Lastly are the Ansei, or Sword Singers. I could make a long video talking about them, however, for this video, all I will say is by the 4th era, the Ansei are basically extinct and seen as just a myth. Perhaps aspects of them will make their way into the Elder Scrolls 6, but I don't really see them being a dominant warrior faction. Now, those were the possible warrior factions. Perhaps one of them could be used, or maybe we will get a completely new faction called the Windwalkers or some shit. But now, I think we should talk about the potential magic guild. Now, a magic guild in Hammerfell is kinda tricky, as the Redguards are extremely distrustful of magic. So I believe the only magic guilds that could exist are the ones that originated from outside of Hammerfell. And after the Mages Guild was dissolved after the Oblivion Crisis, there are 2 possible contenders to take the mantle. The first would be the Synod, a group that we know very little about except that they continue to enforce the Mages Guild ban on necromancy, and that they were attempting to locate artifacts of power as encountered in Skyrim in the College of Winterhold questline. The second would be the College of Whispers, which we also know fucking nothing about, but they sound super cool judging by their name. All we know about the College of Whispers is that they do occasionally summon Daedra and use necromancy, something the Synod does not do. Now, both the Synod and the College of Whispers absolutely hate each other, and constantly strive to earn favor from the Elder Council. So, similar to how I suggested a rivalry between the Fighters Guild, there should absolutely be a rivalry between both guilds if they are included in the Elder Scrolls 6. Next off, we have the Criminal Thieving Guild. And unfortunately, there is only one possible faction that I could see being present in Hammerfell, and that is, of course, the Thieves Guild. Now, I don't hate the Thieves Guild. In fact, I thought they were really cool in Morrowind and Oblivion, and their story in Skyrim was very interesting, even if they were more cutthroat than in previous games. My only issue is that they have been in every single Elder Scrolls game since the beginning with Arena in 1994. Regardless of my feelings, considering the Thieves Guild existed in Abaz Landing, as I already mentioned, with the Iron Wheel, it makes sense that they could still be in Abaz Landing, even after more than 1,000 years. However, I do think that an original thieving faction residing in Hammerfell could be possible, like a guild called the Scarabs that maybe have a rivalry with the Thieves Guild or something like that. If it isn't clear already, I really love faction rivalries because, well, I'm a Morrowind fan, but also because it adds conflict and meaningful choices for the player. I'm gonna be very honest. Morrowind's factions did not have the best of stories, and some factions didn't even have stories in general, but because of the depth and rivalry between each other, it made the factions much more enjoyable and something I desperately want to see make a comeback in future games. Anyways, moving on from my ranting, we have the Assassin's Guild. Now, this is an interesting one because most people would naturally say the Dark Brotherhood. However, I would argue by the events of Skyrim, the entire Dark Brotherhood is basically dead. During the events of Skyrim, every Dark Brotherhood sanctuary, with the exception of the Skyrim Sanctuary, is destroyed. Not only that, but when playing through the Dark Brotherhood questline, you witness the Penitus Oculatus kill almost every Dark Brotherhood member with the exception of the player, Nazir, and Babette. This means, even though you were able to assassinate the Emperor, the Dark Brotherhood is on its knees and dying. And I haven't even mentioned yet how you can just destroy the entire Dark Brotherhood yourself, completely eradicating them from Tamriel entirely. Because of all that, I don't really see the Dark Brotherhood returning as a playable faction in the Elder Scrolls 6, and we could likely see a new faction take its place. The only other assassin faction that is still around is the Morag Tong. However, they are a Morrowind-based faction, and are also on the opposite side of Tamriel, so I don't ever see them having a presence in the Elder Scrolls 6 if it's in Hammerfell. So, to answer the question on what assassin organization would exist in the Elder Scrolls 6, my answer is I have absolutely no idea, except for maybe a new Hammerfell-based faction to be created. Or maybe I was wrong and the Dark Brotherhood somehow makes a return. Now, that's the end of the 4 primary factions that are seen in every Elder Scrolls game. But I don't think that's where it has to end. There are still many other factions in lore that I think we should be allowed to join, including the Knightly Orders and the Noble Houses of Hammerfell. I'll start with the Noble Houses. Similar to Morrowind, how you had the great houses like Redoran, Hlaalu, and the sexy Telvanni, Hammerfell also sports 2 main houses, or political factions, the Crowns and the Forebears. The Crowns are the more traditionalist and conservative faction that don't really like outsider influence and stick to their own customs, and their Yokuden religion, which differs heavily from the Imperial 9 Divines. The Forebears, on the other hand, are quite the opposite, and are much more liberal when it comes to tradition and religion. In fact, the Forebears do not worship the Yokuden gods, and instead take practice in the worshipping the Imperial 9 Divines. Now, it goes without saying that the Crowns and the Forebears also hate each other, and have had a long rivalry between each other spanning over centuries. However, this rivalry may have waned with the Thalmor invasion of Hammerfell, which saw all Redguards uniting under a common foe, because fuck the Thalmor! Now, there is also a mention of a House Suda by Kamatu in Skyrim, which means there could potentially be other houses in Hammerfell. However, personally, I am okay with just having the Crowns and the Forebears, and similar to Skyrim with the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, I would like to only be able to join one faction and be prohibited from joining the other after making my choice. Considering the events in Hammerfell during the 4th era with the Thalmor, I don't really see the Forebears and the Crowns engaging in all-out wars, but we could see a small bit of rivalry between each other, similar to Morrowind but on a smaller scale. Lastly are the Knightly Orders. In Daggerfall, and sort of in Oblivion, we were able to join knightly factions. Most Knightly Orders were based in Daggerfall, however, there were a few in the game Daggerfall that resided in parts of northern Hammerfell, including the Knights of the Hawk of Santaki. the Knights of the Wheel of Ababan Gora, the Order of the Candle of Sentinel, and the Order of the Scarab of Totambu. I think it would be really cool to be able to join one of these knightly factions, and each would represent a certain aspect of fighting and chivalry, similar to how the knightly orders in the ESO High Isle DLC were portrayed. Also, when progressing through the faction quests from whomever, I would like to see a return to the ranking system seen in Morrowind and Oblivion, where after each quest, you rank up and given greater rewards. Skyrim excluded this feature, which I think was rather unfortunate. You were either a member of a faction or a leader of a faction, and there was no middle ground. The only exception to this was the Civil War factions, which saw you rank up and have different titles on either the Imperial and Stormcloak sides, which was super cool, especially because the rankings were different depending on your chosen side, like Stormblade for the Stormcloaks or Legate for the Imperials. And that is all I wrote! A video where I analyze the possible factions that could be in the Elder Scrolls 6, and suggest how they could be portrayed. This video is also a sort of wish list where I want Bethesda to move away from how factions were done in Oblivion, Skyrim, and even Starfield, and return to how they were implemented in Morrowind. So, with that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.